Garland Nixon here, and I'm going to talk about the latest kind of update on what's happening with the Russiagate scandal and my thoughts on Donald Trump's restrictions and his ability to pursue it. Let's talk. Hello, boiling all over the place here. My chair is caught up. For God's sake, I don't even think I'm in the middle of this thing anymore. But at any rate, let's get talking about the Russiagate scandal. The Russiagate scandal. You know, for people like me, I've been onto this thing from the very beginning. I've been pursuing this thing from the very beginning. And it's one of those things that you find in life that there are a lot of things that the less you know about it, the more you'll believe it. You know, there's certain things like I used to say, you know, I was a guy, there are people, I was trained when I was with the law enforcement. One of the things I was trained on was financial crimes, asset forfeiture, and seizure, right? And then when I was with the ACLU, I worked, some of the laws that I worked on was asset forfeiture, financial crimes, asset forfeiture. And I eventually found out enough about it that I said, there's only two kinds of people. There's people that support the asset forfeiture and forfeiture seizure laws, and there's people that understand it. Because if you understand how they are, there's just no way to support it. You know what I mean? I mean, come on, realistically, most Americans, if I explain them to most Americans, they'd be like, well, that's blatantly unconstitutional. I'd be like, blatantly it is. Clearly is unsupportable, which just which tells us the truth about the Constitution. And that's the reality. There are certain things, we have things that we believe, things that we assume are true, axioms, things that we believe are self-evident, right? When we find out the truth, we're like, oh my God, we've been had. Let's talk about the Russiagate scandal. The Russiagate hoax. Now, people call it a scandal. People call it a hoax. I'll tell you what I called it very, very early. I called it an intelligence operation because that's what it was. Russiagate was an intelligence operation. And it transformed into something. It started off as one thing and it transformed into something else right now. If you're a Democrat and you're a diehard Democrat and you hate Trump with a Democratic Party hate, then what I found was anything that you're told about Trump, you got to believe it. Not because it's true or it's not true, because you hate Trump. That's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. It's funny because I remember when the Russiagate scandal, hoax, whatever you want to call it, was going on. It was a scandal, but it wasn't a Trump scandal. It was intelligence. It was a government scandal. But I remember when it was going on and people would say something about that. And I'd say, I've looked into that. And all the evidence points to an intelligence operation against Donald Trump. It just makes no sense to me. People would say, oh, you're a Trump supporter. And I would say, what the hell does that have to do with it? Whether I am or not. Clearly, I'd be like, I'm a lefty. I'm to the far left of the Democrats. So how the hell would I be a Trump supporter? But if you understand, what they were really saying was this: I'm a Democrat and I hate Trump. And if you hate Trump, you must believe this, no matter what. As a matter of, and let's go back to the pre-enlightenment phase, you believe it as a matter of faith. You got faith that it's true because it's Trump and they said it about Trump and you hate Trump. And anything anybody says about Trump is bad, bad, bad because you hate Trump. And somebody could come along and say, Trump, he's the one that stole the Hope Diamond. I knew it. It stole the Hope Diamond. You don't even know if the Hope Diamond was stolen, but when somebody said Trump did it, they believed it. And the intelligence agencies understood that dynamic. They understood that Trump wasn't the guy they wanted and that they had a whole country full of saps and suckers that you could tell them anything, that they don't believe things as a matter of intellect, as a matter of facts and empirical data. No, they believe things based on what makes them feel good, what gives me a dopamine rush, what really makes me feel great. I hate Trump. Trump's a Russian bot. I knew that some bitch was a Russian bot. Woo, that feels good. Dopamine rush. Oh, release of chemicals in my brain that make me happy. Trump's a Russian bot, and I hate Trump. Oh, doesn't that feel good? It felt good. And I would ask people, I'd say, well, the evidence, people would say, well, Trump, blah, Russia, Putin, this and that. And I'd say, well, I've researched it now. I'm speaking the wrong language for these people. In hindsight, I would say, I've done deep research into this subject. Well, never mind. Woo, right to run out, right out the other. I've done deep research. Me too. And your research was watching MSNBC and Rachel Maddow. I've done my own independent research, looking into facts that I could find that nobody disputed, information I could find that nobody disputed. And based on the information that I see, using a historical context, it appears that this is an intelligence operation and a coup attempt against Donald Trump, a pre-election coup attempt and a post-election coup attempt against Donald Trump. And it seems like it's all a pack of lies that was invented by the intelligence agencies. Oh, why do you support Trump? Their interpretation of what I was saying was this: I like Trump, so I won't believe the bad things about him. Which made sense if your mindset is this: I hate Trump, so I'll believe any bad things against them. They're now in a mindset that's worked like this. If you believe Russiagate, then you're one of us. You're a member of our tribe, of our group, the anti-Trump people. If you don't believe Russiagate, then you're a member of the bad people, the deplorables, dare I say, the pro-Trump people, which doesn't align with those of us who say, I believe things based on data and empirical evidence, and even a feeling. If I get enough data and I feel like that makes sense, I can go with a feeling. I'm a former investigator. Sometimes you go with a feeling, and you understand that sometimes that feeling is wrong. Sometimes you're like, I think that some bitch did it. Just got a feeling, and you find out that he didn't. But that's where you let the data and the evidence, and you're like, I really thought that guy did it. But now that I look at this, I don't see how he could have did it. I don't think he did. I thought he did. I was pretty sure it was the boyfriend. He was the one that did it. And then when I looked into the evidence, it wasn't him. It's the way it works in an investigation. But you got all of those tools to work with, those mental tools to work with. But if you just believe shit because you don't like somebody, you're just not much of an investigator. And I would say to people, well, I've looked into this and the evidence just doesn't point to it. However, I'm open. I'm all ears. Tell me, what did I miss? What evidence do you have, right, that demonstrates that Donald Trump is, a Russian bot? And people would say things like this: oh yeah, what about the Trump Tower meeting? And I'd say, what about it? Okay, I have researched the Trump Tower meeting. Everything I could find, I've looked into it. There was a Russian lawyer there by the name of Natalia Veselnitskaya, using an interpreter. She speaks a little bit of English, but using an interpreter. I have personally interviewed her along with someone else, so I've heard her side of the story. So I'm very familiar with the Trump Tower meeting. But maybe I missed something. What was it about the Trump Tower that convinced you when it convinced me the opposite? And I get that staring glaze. No, it was just like this. I've been watching Rachel Maddow, and she keeps saying the Trump Tower meeting, the Trump Tower meeting. So I know there's something about the Trump Tower meeting that shows that Trump's a Russian bot. I don't know what. I just know to say the Trump Tower meeting because they all say the Trump Tower meeting. And at some point I realized this is emotional. This has nothing. And I remember I even had a guy that once, and I just gave him some evidence. We went back and forth, and at some point he was cornered. And I'm like, so it's clearly obvious you don't have anything. And he's like, okay, yeah, but I think this is a blunt object that we can use to beat Trump over the head. He admitted that he had nothing. And he admitted this is a weapon to be used against Trump. And I said to him, well, thank you for coming over to my side. And if by we can use to beat Trump over the head, you mean the FBI and the intelligence operations and the warmongering neocons? Yeah. We, if you consider yourself part of that we group, I don't. I don't. I don't care. It doesn't matter if I like Trump. Doesn't matter if I hate Trump. Those things are irrelevant. Trump is a jerk. Trump is a moron. Trump is a great guy. Trump is a saint. That's irrelevant to me. That's emotional stuff. That's for people who are dragged around by their emotions. That's for people, and I'm going to get into this, who are waiting to be caught in the net of suckers. So anyway, so there we go. So I actually did actual investigations. I worked with Ray McGovern and talked to him and interviewed him and time again to really get it. Because I didn't want to be Trump's a jerk. No, Trump's a good guy. Now, sometimes I'll say Trump's a jerk, but Trump couldn't tell the truth. You know, he told the truth once, but he lied his way out of it, things like that, in jest. And in reality, that I know Trump has a tenuous relationship with facts and reality and truth. And I understand his game. I ain't hating for him. I'm loving it. That's his game. I understand Trump's game. Let's face it, he's been successful with his tenuous relationship with the truth. But the business about Trump's a jerk, Trump's a good guy, those things don't come before me. I don't use those to evaluate it. You know what? I could be doing an investigation and a guy could be accused of murder and he could be the lowest scumbag on earth and I could hate his guts. What a moron, an idiot, a jerk. And I did the investigation and found out he's innocent. If he's innocent, he should walk free. If he didn't commit any crime, he should go. So the fact that whether I like Trump or haven't liked Trump, now I kind of feel like Trump is, shall we say, losing his fastball a little bit, to be quite frank. I don't think he's mentally and emotionally solid in some ways, to be quite frank. Again, irrelevant. We're talking about a very important issue here. So let's get to it. As I've said, the Russiagate investigation was the Five Eyes initially. And let's not forget, where did it start? It started in London, George Papadopoulos and with Carter Page and all that stuff, right? People, a mysterious professor, Joseph Mifsud, who went to talk with, I don't know, Papadopoulos, Page, whoever the hell, I don't remember all of it. Even well, I always get Carter Page and George Papadopoulos mixed up as to which was which. Also, there was a guy named Alexander Downer. He was a Australian diplomat, which means he was a spy, right? Then you had MI6 all over it. So what you had was, it's clear, it was the Five Eyes. That's what it was. This was an international operation. This guy, Mifsud, apparently worked with Italian. I don't even think he's a real person, but whoever this actor was playing Mifsud was Italian. So what we had was, we had an operation where international NATO Western intelligence came together and said, we got to stop Trump. It was NATO. It was Five Eyes. NATO intelligence said, we got to stop this guy from getting elected. And after he gets elected, we got to come after him nonstop. That's what they did. That's what I found. That's the reality. The things that they did, they cooked up a bunch of lies. They made up stuff. They tried to entrap people. They misinterpreted. They would go after some guy and say, yes, sirree. What's the guy's name? That was the Ukraine was involved. What's the guy's name? That was he was Trump's original campaign manager, and he had been working in Ukraine, involved in money laundering, as everybody working in Ukraine was. Isn't it interesting? Everybody was working in Ukraine, but this thing came out, and it said that he was taking money from somebody who was a connected to Russian intelligence, and Trump had to fire him. So Trump fired the guy, right? And then as soon as Trump got, now this came from Ukraine. It actually came from Comey's group, which was called NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau in Ukraine. And they couldn't find Hunter Biden was involved in corruption. Imagine that. But at any rate, so they sent this so-called black ledger over that said this guy was involved in Paul Manafort. Yep. It said Paul Manafort was Trump's guy and he's connected to Russian intelligence, and Trump had to fire him. As soon as Trump got elected, you know what the same Ukrainian people said? Oh, yeah, that black ledger that we sent about Paul Manafort, perhaps in hindsight, it was wrong. They just made it up. It was just, they've just made it up, literally. So Ukraine was also used. There were a number of people who were working, who admitted working with the Ukrainian embassy, investigating Donald Trump in Ukraine for his Russian connections. Ukraine was part of that. That was Biden, Obama owned Ukraine. They had overthrown the government of Ukraine. They were in charge of the Ukrainian government. So Ukraine was part of the tool that they were using to go after Trump. And here's the reality. I don't vote for Trump. Wouldn't vote for Hillary, wouldn't vote for Democrat or Republican, but this is a reality. It's not up to me to like or dislike them. These are the facts. You got to go where the facts take you. So here's my point. Actually, somebody said Russiagate is in the past. Actually, it's not. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard just released some more Russiagate stuff, and I'm going to touch on that. It's important because Trump can't go after it so far. And I'm going to explain why. So, bottom line, they used all of their mechanisms to go after him. Okay, clear and obvious. If you're a Democrat, you just can't believe it because you're a Democrat. Face it, at this point, if you're a Democrat, I mean, you're so brainwashed by now at this point, you're like loving the FBI and the CIA. You think they're here to protect you. You think the CIA and the FBI, why, they're here to protect us. If you're a Republican, then you probably got to believe that yes, sirree, all we got to do is less regulations for Wall Street. We'll all be better off. We got to deregulate Wall Street because that free market, the free market that's so free. That's what we're standing for. If you still believe all of that stuff, then you're wonderful. You know, the market's free. It's certainly not a highly manipulated scheme that's run by the oligarchs and the billionaires, and you get screwed out of you. Free market, just less regulations, let it do its thing. It's kind of doing its thing now. Anyway, but it's fine. You can believe all of that crap, if whichever one you want to believe. It's up to you. But when it comes to Russiagate, I had to go where the facts took me. Now, let's talk about the current iteration of Russiagate and why it's important to think about it and talk about it and to connect all this together. I just wanted to throw a little background on Russiagate. And I'll touch on some of the things that Trump can't look into, right? And why. There are things in Russiagate that are so obvious that they scream for an investigator to look at. They scream to you. They're crying out from their Russiagate grave saying, why in the world during the Mueller investigation did the Mueller team look into two people, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page? They were both with the Department of Justice and FBI, respectively. FBI is under the Department of Justice anyway. And they were after Trump, and they were a big part of Crossfire Hurricane, which is the evidence, which is the investigation against Trump. And they were texting back and forth. And at one point, Peter Strzok sent a text to Lisa Page saying, don't worry, Trump's not going to get elected. We have an insurance plan. At that point, he becomes a suspect for a crime. Were they going to kill Trump? Were they going to do something to thwart the election? That, at this point, you look at it and you say, that's evidence. You need to look into it. But at some point during the Mueller investigation, the Mueller team looked at Page and Strzok's phones, and they found, I've heard anywhere from 20 to 40,000 texts between them. They found tens of thousands of texts between them. Now, keep in mind, we've already recognized that there was a text from Peter Strzok that said, we have an insurance plan, he's not going to get elected. That's prima facie evidence that he intended to commit a crime, right? Evidence on its face. Prima facie evidence that on its face, you look at that and you can imply that guy's planning on committing a crime. He's planning on stopping somebody from getting elected. We have an insurance plan. Who is we? So at that point, you have one of these texts that has in it prima facie evidence of a crime. That now you have probable cause, reasonable suspicion, everything you need to believe that this guy may commit a crime. So you want to look through all his texts, don't you? Because there could be all of the evidence you need for the crime. The Mueller team found tens of thousands of texts between Page and Strzok, and they deleted them. They just deleted them. That is destruction of evidence, tampering with investigations. they should be charged with a crime. If I and you give Garland that investigation, I'm going to bring him in and ask him. I'm going to put him that. Look at this. We have a text that has prima facie evidence of a crime. We have further text. At that point, you were doing an investigation into this thing. Your job at that point is to say, we got prima facie evidence of a crime. Let's look at the rest of these and see if we can make this crime. But instead, you acted on behalf of the potential criminal. So now, that's one of many things that screams there's something here that needs to be looked into. If I'm Trump, gotta look into that. That's Rich's laptop. This is odd. Some guy catches 3 rounds in the back on the streets of DC. And the FBI comes and takes the case. Why? They said it was an attempted robbery. How many attempted robberies where there's a murder? How many murders in DC? Did the FBI come to the scene and say, we're taking it over? Why that one? Number one. And they took his laptop and all the electronic devices and denied they had them until it came out in court. Oh, yeah, well, we don't have them. Then it comes out in court, they had them. And now FOIA requests are saying we want the information off the laptop, and the FBI said, can't get it. Well, where's Cash Patel now? How come he's not saying, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to let it loose. Don't you find that interesting? Cash Patel, all of this crap. But he did say, we got to prioritize Israel. Anyway, so that's the second thing. I'm looking into that. One more thing. And I'll just say 3 things that scream that looking into. Scream to you as an investigator, I got to look into those. Let me give you one more. An obvious crime. You probably know about the infamous Hunter Biden laptop, where the FBI won't get into all the details. They ended up with Hunter Biden's laptop. One in December, it was 2020. December, they get the election. Oh, no, 2019, I believe. I guess it would be in December. So they get this Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, I would think at that point, their job would be to look through it and make sure there's nothing that could compromise the office of the presidency. So let's assume they did it. So this is December. 10 months later, it's October. There's an election. So they've had it for 10 months. There's an election in November. Month or so before the election, the FBI sends one of their operatives around. He goes to Twitter, he goes to Instagram, he goes to Facebook, he goes to the media, and he says the same thing to all of them. Look, if somebody comes to you and says that there's a Hunter Biden laptop and it has all bad things about Joe Biden, yeah, it's Russian disinformation. Not only should you censor it, we'd be happy to help you censor it. The FBI had the laptop. They knew that it was not Russian disinformation because they had it for the last 10 months. But rather than go to the press and say we've got the laptop, they hid it from the press. And they said, "Oh, it's Russian disinformation." How could it be when you got the laptop? It's a pump and dump. And then they had 52 former intelligence officials Politico with some article that said that it had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, but they knew it didn't because they had it, and they lied and hid that they had it, and they deliberately worked to make sure that the American people couldn't access it or find out what was going on weeks before the election. Clearly, they did that to interfere with the election because it would have looked bad for Joe Biden. Okay. You got to investigate that. That's one of the clearest cases of election interference that you would ever see. Clearest cases. I could go on and on. I could talk about CrowdStrike, the FBI. So the DNC computer has been hacked by the Russians. So how do we know that, FBI? The FBI says, well, this private company came in called CrowdStrike, and they investigated it, and they found that it was hacked by the Russians, and that the Russians stole these emails. So that's what we're told. Then the CEO of CrowdStrike is called before Congress under oath, and they ask him, about the Russians stealing the emails. And you know what he says? We have no evidence that anybody stole anything off of that. It looked like all the Russian the earmarks of Russian hacking operations, but we don't have any evidence that anybody took anything off of it. But we were told that the Russians stole these emails. But the CEO of CrowdStrike testified under oath that they have no evidence that anybody, much less the Russians, took anything off that laptop. But here's where Garland Nixon says this cries out for investigations. Well, why would the FBI say, yes, the Russians did it? Let me ask you this. The FBI never looked at the laptop. How do you know that FBI? CrowdStrike told us. Let me ask you this. Let's just say I suspected of child porn on my phone, my computer, my app, whatever, some electronic product. Do you think the FBI would let a private company come in and look at my electronic device and then say, well, we're gonna we're gonna go along with what these other companies said. We'll add one other thing to it. We found during the Roger Stone trial that the FBI had basically said what they testified to. They said, well, CrowdStrike was supposed to give us a final report, a forensic analysis. They were going to give us something that said, this is how we knew it was the Russians. Did they ever give it to you? Nope. So the FBI said, the Russians did this. This is what the Russians, how do you know it? CrowdStrike told you. Did they ever give you any forensic evidence, anything to support that? No, they, word of mouth, basically. Let me ask you this. Think about this. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there was some crime and they caught Russian, Dmitry Nixon, the Russian guy who hacked into the computer. But the FBI didn't have any evidence. CrowdStrike was so could the FBI pursue a case? Could the FBI charge someone? No. Well, they could charge them, but even then, they'd have to bring in CrowdStrike to testify and to show the forensic analysis that proved that the guy did it. So, in other words, it's not something that any police department, much less the FBI, an investigator, when I had a bunch of investigators working for me, if one of them came and said, yes, we're going to charge this guy with a crime. Okay, whoa, did you do an investigation? Nah, some guy from some company told us he did it. We'll just call him in as the witness. You ain't going to be investigator no more for Garland Nixon. You're out of investigations. That's unthinkable. So, doesn't it cry out for an investigation, bringing the FBI people involved? So tell me about this CrowdStrike thing. Whose idea was it? Why would you believe them? Show me all the documentation that you got from CrowdStrike. Now, let me add this. Well, I'll say this. So let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. Right there, I gave you a handful of things that scream out, you must investigate me. Do you think Trump is going to investigate any of them? I don't believe so. I don't believe that the Trump team, can do an in-depth investigation into Russiagate. Now let's get into why. When after law enforcement, and I knew about the dirt going on in law enforcement because I was a high-ranking official, cover-ups, all kinds of things. And so I worked on police accountability, basically saying, look, if a law enforcement officer commits a crime, he should have the same, or is accused of a crime, he should have the same accountability as every other citizen, no more, no less. That's what I believed in. And what I found was this. There is terms that are used to protect the system. And this is the way it works, and you should be wary of it. Bad apples. It's what I call the bad apple syndrome. You've got a system, and the system works a certain way. And rather than admit that there's a systemic problem, you say there's, quote, a few bad apples. It implies there are individuals making bad decisions. And because these individuals made the bad decisions, they're only responsible for the crime. That the system is pure, it's pristine, it works great. It's just that there's a couple of bad guys in the system, and all we have to do is clean out the few bad apples. And I'm like, that's weird, because officers come and go, and this stuff just keeps happening. You clear out the bad apples, sooner or later retire. But what new bad apples? This is not about fruit, my friends. What I came to realize was the bad apple syndrome was something that systems do to protect the system. You say it's not the system, it's people in the system that are individuals doing things that the system wouldn't even approve of. Okay. So the system that went after Donald Trump now represents that system. He's now, I would like to say he's the king of the system, but he ain't. He's an operative within the context of the system, that his masters, the people who have the real power, who make the decisions, tell Donald Trump what to do. And Donald Trump does it, and he has his own ideas or whatever, but they're limited, and they'll let him play in the sandbox where they want him to play in the sandbox, and where they don't, he can't. And it's, but one of the problems in America is people think this is some kind of democracy, and they elect the president, and then he goes in and he represents them. Well, if you've been paying attention recently, you're starting to realize that that whole thing's a fraud. But here's my point. This is critical. Let's get to it. Donald Trump now represents this system. This is the system that went after him, tried to kill him. Think about a mafia boss. And a mafia boss is in this family, and the boss in the family tries to kill him, tries to rub him out. And he finds out, and he rubs the boss out first. So you've got the Don, right? And this Don chief, the head mofo in charge, was it HMFIC, right? Head mofo in charge, tries to rub out Garland, and Garland gets him first. And then the rest of the mafia says, Garland, you know what? You're a tough, strong guy. You're now going to be the alpha male. So now I'm the new Don of the mafia. You think I can tear that mafia apart? It's my mafia. Yes, this system tried to kill me, but now I run the system. So now I got to make sure that this system, I can't turn on the system. While this system tried to take me out, this system also got me to the top. So I don't want the system screwed up. So here's my point. The FBI is what it is. You got to understand what the FBI is. It is the Gestapo. It is the Stasi. It is the secret police of the empire. That's what the FBI is. The FBI is not a law enforcement agency. You may not know the FBI as well as me. I work with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, trained with the FBI, trained with the, I've told people I've trained with DITRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, under the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've worked with these people. They're not incompetent, and they're not stupid. They're well-educated, highly trained people. The things that they claim are mistakes are never mistakes. Oh, we accidentally did this. Oh, how did we do this? How did we overlook that? It's a lie every time. They didn't accidentally do it. They didn't overlook something. They didn't make an error. All that stuff they did was intentional. I've been around the FBI. I'm going to tell you right now, it's the secret police. It is, what happens. Look. They killed Martin Luther King. They killed him. There's no question about that in my mind. Did you know there was a lawsuit? Look it up. There was a lawsuit. And the lawsuit found that by the King family, and it found that there was a wide conspiracy that included government officials. They killed, you could go on and on and on. They killed a lot more people than you and I could ever imagine. What did Hoover do? Can anybody look at the way Hoover handled the FBI? He got compromising information on members of Congress constantly and used it against them, and other people too. It was the secret police. It still is. It is the Gestapo. It is the arm of the U.S. empire that's used to stop dissent, internal repression, even whether it's government. And if it's necessary to do some wet work and to take somebody out, they'll do it. Now, Donald Trump now is there, and he's the emperor of the empire. Donald Trump is talking about, we're going to take out the deep state. We're at war with the deep state. Tulsi Gabbard, we've been fighting the deep state. No, Donald Trump's not fighting the deep state. Donald Trump's not at war with the deep state. Donald Trump is he presides, president. President, think of the word. President doesn't mean you're in charge. It means you preside over a system. You facilitate it. You kind of make it happen. Preside over it. Okay? So Donald Trump now presides over the FBI. Donald Trump, if he was to do a proper investigation, it would wipe out the FBI. It would thoroughly discredit the FBI because Donald Trump would, that investigation would demonstrate to everybody, holy crap, they've killed people, American citizens. They spy on us. They lie, cheat, and steal. Oh my God! In 2020, they literally did an attempted election, attempted to overturn the election, and they may have had some luck. We would look at how they work together with the CIA. The law says the CIA can't spy on us here, but they are. Oh, of course, Obama changed that. But my point being, Donald Trump now presides over this system. And if a proper investigation of the FBI would reveal the inherent corruption in the system. Corruption is ubiquitous throughout the system because in our intelligence system, the US, I mean, CIA and FBI and the NSA and all of that, corruption, we'll call it corruption because it's illegal under under US law and international law. What they're doing is illegal. We can call it corruption. But that's only if you believe that they really have those laws there as a guide for them. It ain't a guide for them, it's for you and I. They understand. The CIA, the FBI know they don't have to play by those rules. Think about this. James Comey and Christopher Wray and all the rest of these guys, they signed a document that went to the court, the FISA court, and it was to get a warrant for spying. I think it was on Carter Page. They signed it like I forgot how many times, 10, 7, 17, a lot of times, these same documents. They were packed with lies. They were absolutely packed with lies. And they knew they were packed with lies. They utilized the Steele dossier, and they knew the Steele dossier was packed with lies. As soon as I read it, I'm like, wait a minute. The Steele dossier literally says, now tell me how the FBI couldn't figure it out, and I can figure this out in one reading. The FBI, the Steele dossier literally says that the Russians used their consulate in Miami. They used their Florida consulate in Miami to funnel money for their operation, their election interference operation, right? Oh boy, that's wow. The Russians used their Miami consulate. Oh, that's deep. Hey, I wonder how they figured that out. Except there is one minor problem with that assertion. The Russians don't have a consulate in Miami. So the FBI looks at this thing and the guy says, yes, sir, they're using a Miami consulate. Oh, there's no consulate in Miami. And you can't figure that the whole document's a fraud. At that point, I'm like, what the hell am I doing reading this? When you read it, it's absurd. It's absurd. And the FBI knew it was absurd. And the FBI then lied and they said, oh, no, this was lied under oath. No, this was not used as a predicate for these warrants. But if you look at the warrants, they were. They told the FOIA FISA court that it was. So they've done nothing but lie. But it doesn't matter because they are a tool of the U.S. empire. They're a tool of the machine. When you call it the deep state, it's just the state. It ain't deep. But here's the bottom line. These are tools of the state. So I guess if you're going to use the term deep state, you'd have to do this. You would have to say that when the state uses clandestine means to accomplish its goals, we'll call those clandestine means the deep state. But if the state's using clandestine means, then is it deep? It's still just the state. The state used the FBI for this Trump stuff because they wanted to take out Trump, but it's still just the state. So I understand the term deep state, the steady state, whatever the case. This machine just keeps churning along, my friends. It just keeps churning along. And now Donald Trump, who ostensibly is looking into, his team is looking into the Russiagate. Here's the problem. Start here. After Epstein, why would anybody believe they're looking into anything anymore? You'd have to be a fool. You'd have to be a fool to think they're looking into anything. What Trump say? Yes, we're going to look into the Epstein thing and we're going to share the list. Everybody's like, we want the list, the client list. How about the client list? The client list, the client list, the client list, the client list. Everybody says the client list, right? But the Trump team has very, very conveniently changed the term. So we're like, we want the client list. So the Trump team's like this. Well, we may release the Epstein files. Who the hell said anything about Epstein files? We didn't say we want the Epstein files. We don't even know what the Epstein files are. See, they changed the narrative by very subtly just changing the foundational terms. Hey, we want the client list. Oh, so you want the Epstein files? So once they say Epstein file, the client list is specific. Remember, be wary when you're doing language, when you're doing the interpretation of statement analysis. Be wary going from the general to the specific, or the specific to the general. Be very, very wary. Oh my gosh. What in the heck was that? Something really weird appeared on my phone. I'm like, what in the heck is that? Anyway, so be very wary when you are, somebody's just putting the same thing up over and over again. Why? That's weird. Anyway, people just, sometimes you get weird. So the bottom line is, where was I? Oh, what they did with the Epstein files, and this is important because this is taking us where we need to go. They changed it from the client list to the Epstein files, and now they're going to argue about whether they give us the client list. And furthermore, what they're going to do is they're going to just give us something. I think Trump said something about some conversations in front of a grand jury or something under the broad term Epstein files. That could work. Once you say Epstein files, anything you give, we're going to give the Epstein files. What is this? Well, we've got a list of all the clothes that he's worn. Epstein files, we gave the Epstein file. We didn't ask for the damn Epstein files. We want the client list. But they changed it away. Now, what happened? We want the Epstein files. Trump, I'll give you the Epstein files. We want the Epstein files. Bibi Netanyahu shows up on Sunday, and all of a sudden they say there are no Epstein files. Okay, there are absolutely no Epstein files. So people are like, Trump, I think we've been had. And Trump says, well, it's just like Russiagate. The bottom line is, the Democrats cooked this thing up. No, it ain't. They didn't cook it up. You told us you'd give it to us. And now you said you won't. So what happens? Within a week, boom, look at this. Russiagate stuff. Now, what did Trump say? It's just like Russiagate. Speaking of Russiagate, Tulsi Gabbard, come over here. Let's have a little talk. I'm screwed. We got a debacle here. The Mossad, the CIA, MI6, Epstein, kids. Here's the bottom line. I need an out. I need you to give me some stuff on Russiagate. Okay, we'll release some stuff on Russiagate. They release stuff on Russiagate. That's the way I see it. They released stuff on Russiagate. That was it. Okay. And that was a cover for the Epstein debacle, which, because it's an Israeli Mossad, CIA, MI6, Five Eyes operation, they can't do anything with it. Somebody said, I want the Rockford files. Anyway, somebody says I'm getting ad breaks into my live stream. That's weird. Anyway, in my live stream ad breaks, that's kind of scary. Hey, look, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about YouTube, whatever they're doing, for God's sake. Before you know it, they'll probably have my face and there'll be like a Snickers bar over. They'll use AI and I'll be like, yes, about Epstein. And then all of a sudden you'll see me go, but when I'm thinking about Epstein, there's nothing like Snickers and a Coke. And I'll be like, I didn't do that. But it'll be like, they'll do that with AI or something, Anyway, so, well, at least I hope they're still letting me run. Are they doing it in a little side window or something? God only knows. Anyway. So the point being, with this Epstein stuff, Trump was flattened with Epstein. There's nothing he can do, and they released this. They released that. And if you notice something, they didn't release it before. Why? If Trump was just going to release why didn't he release the Russiagate stuff before? Cash Patel. And why Tulsi Gabbard? Why not Cash Patel? He's the one running the FBI. It was cover. They're putting out, you know what it is? It's a smoke screen. You know what tanks do? You know what a squid does when you try to get him? He squirts black ink in the water. It makes it hard to see him and disorients you and confuses you. That's what they're doing. It's squid ink. Whoop. Hey, can we see the Epstein files? Hey, look, Russiagate. That's all it means to me. And that being the case, because Trump is in charge of the machine now, if he releases, getting towards the end, if Trump releases the info on Russiagate that he really needs to release, it will reveal the truth about the FBI, and people will say, "Holy Mother of God, they really are the Gestapo." Oh my God! If people find out what they did, they'll say, "Well, if they did that, God only knows what they did." Let me ask you this. A lot of conservatives and a lot of other people that weren't conservatives, such as me, were very concerned about January 6th. And they said, the FBI has admitted that they had people in the crowd. How many? 1, 3, 100? We would like to know for my own, I think I got a right to know. What did the FBI do January 6th? There are people saying it was just an attempt to overthrow the government by a bunch of bad guys. There are other people saying it was a complete total FBI operation. Here's what I have to say. Show us the truth so we know. The FBI is like, no, not at all. The FBI has to investigate. No, we had nothing to do with it. So, guess what I say? The best disinfectant is sunshine. Release everything. How many people were there? Why? What information did you have beforehand, afterwards? What did you do? Well, give me everything. And then we can look at it and we can say, okay, the FBI was up to no good or they weren't. Fine. Trump's been there 6 months. Got nothing on Epstein. We got nothing on January 6th. The things that we asked for, we ain't getting it. We ain't getting it because they're Trump's people now. And that's a tool that Trump want to use. Look, first of all, start here. You think Trump ain't using the tools? Did you know this? There are Zionist organizations. There are these Israeli Zionist organizations that go out and get a bunch of names. Garland Nixon. And they go give them to Trump. And then they give them to the FBI or whoever, and they go investigate these people, or they throw them out of the country, or they send them to Guantanamo Bay, or whatever the case. So you've got Zionist organizations now who are giving stuff to Trump and the FBI, and they're doing, which is totally illegal. Here's some names. Go look at the names, and they're taking action based on that. If you look into that stuff, that's very unconstitutional. But Trump's involved in that. Can he take out the FBI? They're doing dirty work for him. No. No, he's not going to reveal, even though they tried to take him out. They're his monster. Not saying completely now, but in a way, they are his monster now. They will do his dirty work, and he wants that tool. They're the Gestapo. Americans have to realize that's who they are. And Donald Trump ain't going to reveal the sources and methods of the Gestapo that he uses right now to go after anti-Zionists and anti-imperialists and whoever. Soon, I'm sure they'll be going after socialists. They'll be going after, if you say, I don't believe something that the government wants you to believe, you're screwed. The FBI will come get you. That's a tool that he can use. And if he was to tell the truth about what the FBI did during Russiagate and other things, let me ask you this. How much have you gotten about COVID? A little bit. Little teeny bit, a little bit, like, yes, the government was in contact with Twitter or whoever. Okay, fine. I got most of that stuff before this. I want to get details. What did they say? Emails that came from the State Department, going to Twitter, going to wherever. Can we get some of that? Shouldn't Trump say, yes, we're releasing all that? No, this is his machine. And he's part of the machine now. And the machine ain't going to turn on the machine. He's part of what he called, we're war on the deep state. He's part of the deep state because it's the state. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedules. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. And most importantly, if you can, follow me on Rockman, follow me on Rumble, follow me on Substack, follow me on Facebook, Telegram, Patreon, if you can afford it. PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Cash App would be great. Any of those. If you can, it doesn't matter. There's my P.O. box now. You can send me mail. It doesn't matter if you can or can't. The most important thing is share this on all your social media platforms, and not just me. If you're watching any of Danny Haiphong, Judge Knapp, Counter Currents with Larry Johnson, whoever it is, Ritter's Rant, you name it. If you're watching any of them, if you see one that you like, share it on all your social media platforms. And don't forget, everybody, make sure you put hashtag Free Laith Maroof on anything that you tweet or anything else out there. Hashtag Free Laith Maroof. Our brother, our dear beloved friend, Laith Maroof, has been nabbed by, last I heard, Lebanon's military intelligence, which shows you they know he's powerful. He's very, very powerful. He's doing great work. And let's all stand for him. And everybody, don't forget, # Free Laith Maroof. Put that on everything you do. Thanks a lot. I'm out.